Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Dustin Poirier. Now, what really happened in this fight? It was a classic Khabib fight from his part, and Poirier took a completely different approach than what he usually takes in previous fights. For the most part, Khabib was trying to get Dustin Poirier past those black lines to where he'll get close to the cage and he'll shoot from there. And before he shoots, he always gives either a feint or he strikes big. And those two things will cause Dustin Poirier's hands to come up, making the shot to the legs or to the hips a lot more open. So the big punches will cause Dustin Poirier to start blocking, focusing on the headshots because those punches have meaningful power, and the feint combined with the takedown is actually a very quick combination, which gets Dustin Poirier off guard. But how was Khabib able to get Dustin Poirier close to the cage? Actually, it was a lot on Dustin Poirier's part to where he was kind of allowing Khabib to pressure him immediately in the fight. Khabib was keeping a very far distance, and I recommend you guys watching my Dustin Poirier breakdown where I go and explain Khabib versus RDA and what Khabib did differently in that fight. And it's important because RDA has a more similar style to Dustin Poirier than anybody that Khabib has ever fought in his career. And what he did in that fight was, initially, he kept a very far distance to where RDA, a combination puncher, didn't have the necessary distance to combo with his punches. And on the way in to get into that necessary distance to start comboing, they run the risk of getting taken down in that space. And that is what Khabib started to do in this fight as well. In the beginning, he was staying at a very far distance and looking when to explode, looking when to start pressuring Dustin Poirier. And the time he tried to do that was when Poirier backed up a little bit too far away, got pretty close to the cage, pretty close to getting behind the black lines. And that's when Khabib started to come up with that uppercut, come with some other punches after that, causing Dustin Poirier to start covering up. And from there, because he's close to the cage, the takedown is now safe to go for. Dustin Poirier seemed to be extremely defensive or extremely offensive. Wasn't a mix, right? He was either blocking, trying to evade, moving backwards, not throwing any counter shots, or he was moving forward and winging punches out there. And I'm talking about swinging from the bleachers. This is not the Dustin Poirier we saw fight Justin Gaethje, Anthony Pettis, Eddie Alvarez, the guy that has precise, perfect form punching and always looks for those combinations. But there's a difference here. Even though Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez are wrestlers, Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje are more of strikers in MMA, and so is Anthony Pettis. When he goes and fights an actual wrestler who will commit with actual takedowns constantly, you saw a different approach from Dustin Poirier, and that is what Khabib said before this fight. He said Dustin Poirier's never fought a wrestler before. He's fighting a lot of strikers. And I believe because of this, we saw this different approach from Dustin Poirier mid-fight. I don't think he wanted to do this before the fight, but it kind of caused him to do this. And you can see in the corner, Dustin Poirier was kind of panicking or anxious about the takedowns. He literally told his corner, I cannot get this guy off of me. And every time Khabib had him on the cage or on the ground, you see Dustin Poirier looking at his corner, almost in frustration. Like, what do I do here? That kind of look. And I think it forced him to try to get that big knockout, try to land some big punch. And it mostly backfired, except for one instance where he actually landed a big switch-in right overhand that he also landed on Max Holloway, if you remember, that first big punch that rocked Holloway. This is the punch that rocked Khabib Nurmagomedov. Some people say that the punch didn't land too cleanly and Khabib just had some funky footwork moving backwards. The punch landed. The most impactful, the most devastating punch Khabib has ever taken in his entire career. Khabib was doing a very good job of leaning away from all of the punches. He really wasn't getting punched in the face at all. Great job on pulling punches, great job of posting, great job of bringing the right hand up, and a very solid stance with good footwork. But once Dustin Poirier doubled the distance he was covering with that switch in before he threw a big right overhand, this threw off Khabib's range, where he's used to now seeing where Dustin is punching at. And the punch just catches him right at the end of it and rocks Khabib. But almost every single punch afterward misses. And we all know that when Poirier has you hurt, he's not going to stop. So what stopped him here? When he was chasing down this awkward movement of Khabib, Khabib wings out a big left hook and actually stuns Dustin Poirier. This stopped Poirier in his tracks and allowed Khabib to get away safely and resets the action. Again, Dustin Poirier is either focused completely on defense or completely on offense. When he's moving forward, man, I've never seen him so much of a walking target, you know? But the wrestling aspect of Khabib Nurmagomedov, I believe, threw Dustin Poirier into a flux. and made him very antsy and anxious to get that knockout before he gets taken to the ground. Because whenever Khabib got Dustin Poirier to the ground from mostly tripping him, driving him a specific direction, and then tripping out the supporting leg, whenever Dustin Poirier tried to do something to capitalize, to threaten Khabib, or to escape the position, like when he went for those switches as Khabib had the body lock, which was ill-advised a bit because Khabib does have a body lock on him. Khabib wasn't going anywhere. He held on to that, and from that, he was able to get on top of Dustin Poirier into full mount, getting his back. I mean, very dominant positions. Dustin Poirier would go for guillotines, which also got him in a very dangerous position. And one great moment was when Khabib had side control, and he had a knee on Dustin Poirier's belly, putting a lot of pressure on Poirier, but Poirier has his legs on the cage. He could kind of spring off him at any moment. Poirier tried to get out of this. It's a pretty bad position, so he tried to get into a sprawling position, and that's usually not too risky to go for when you're going into it, right? After establishing a sprawling position, that's when it can get pretty dangerous. But against Khabib, even going for this position gets you in trouble. Khabib instantly put hip pressure on top of Poirier, leaning over him, pulled his chin up with his left hand, he drives in his right arm, and grabs onto the right leg of Dustin Poirier, holding it in position, which is why Poirier wasn't able to establish a correct full-on sprawling position under Khabib, and his legs were flattened still on the canvas. And after this, Khabib was able to eventually cradle Dustin Poirier or crunch him in and turn him over on his side, completely confusing Dustin Poirier's focus to the point where Khabib is on the move. He gets right over on top of Dustin Poirier, drives his left arm under Dustin Poirier's legs, and you know what he's going for. He crosses Poirier's legs, hooks around him with his own legs under. I don't know what you want to call this position from Khabib Nurmagomedov, but he has perfected this. He uses it on everybody. He lifts the legs a little bit over the hips, which makes it very hard to balance. You can't even get up from this. You have a very hard time wall walking. I mean, look what happened. Because Poirier wanted to get out of side control and get under Khabib where Khabib will sprawl on top of him, this almost got him full mounted on, pushed up against the cage with his legs above his hips and Khabib on top of him. Just that attempt of trying to get out of a bad position got him into an even worse position. And this was a consistency every single time Dustin Poirier tried to do something. A BJJ black belt getting handled in every situation like this from Khabib Nurmagomedov is alarming and amazing at the same time. And not even just on the ground is Khabib aware of every position and where the hands are, where the legs are going. He knows everything that's going to happen before they happen. Even breaking away from the clinch, he knows where to go to keep position, right? Breaking away from the clinch, he will step to his left and still make Dustin Poirier sit on the cage. If he just went straight backwards, he would have gave Dustin Poirier space to move out to his right, eventually to the center of the cage. But he just steps to his left, cuts him off, and now could throw a 1-2 to mix up for the takedown because Dustin Poirier is past those two black lines. And again, Dustin Poirier is going to cover up on the punches. He's either completely defensive or completely offensive. And now looking at that guillotine from Dustin Poirier, so when Khabib shoots in, Poirier immediately threatened with the guillotine. Actually gotten pretty deep with his arm, and it's an arm-in guillotine. And what you see from this is Khabib instantly tries to get into half guard, which relieves a lot of the pressure, a lot of the squeeze. And actually, this turns into more of pulling than it does squeezing. And it's very hard to submit someone by pulling them inside the guillotine. And the pulling really took effect when Dustin Poirier lost the full guard. But Khabib still needs to respect the choke, and he still tries to get out of it. So what he starts doing is he starts to fall to his left side where he has Dustin Poirier's right leg under him. So there's really no risk to fall onto that side. And when he's doing this, he's also escaping Dustin Poirier's left leg completely, which relieves the choke even more and makes it a lot easier to escape. And what do you know from this? Khabib easily just steps over Dustin Poirier, gets into full mount, Dustin Poirier gives his back, Khabib eventually starts driving in hooks, and Dustin Poirier is holding Khabib's right arm, which is getting close to a choke. But what Poirier does here, a bit of an error, he looks up. I thought initially he was looking at his corner, but his corner is actually on the other side of the cage where the blue text is, but he starts looking up. And this, I think, is a little bit of an error. I don't think it would have made too much of a difference, but because Dustin Poirier has his head up like that, he's exposing the neck. And Khabib's left arm is free. So when Khabib goes to throw a punch, Poirier can sense it. What does Poirier do? He drops his chin down, drops his head down, and look where Khabib's arm is. Right under the neck of Dustin Poirier. He still has Khabib's arm. Khabib's right arm did not move. Poirier dropped his neck onto the forearm of Khabib. He gets punched in the head twice, lets go of the hand because of the blows, and Khabib just easily drives in the choke. The choke is right there. Dustin Poirier gave it to him right there, taps him out. good, dominant win from Khabib Nurmagomedov. And the next fight has to be Tony Ferguson. Khabib has shown to be one of the greatest fighters to ever compete in the sport, trying to be a role model, try to show respect in the sport, none of this trash talking WWE stuff, and it's great and refreshing to see. I hope we get to that. He thinks like hardcore fans do. He wants what hardcore fans want. We gotta cherish Khabib Nurmagomedov, man. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.